Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. Today on the podcast, I have got Aaron Jarvis from Geobtab, and you are the Associate Vice President, Sales and Business Development. That's a long title, isn't it?
It is.
Nice to meet you.
Great to meet you, Liz. Yes, it is a long title. My business card's a page of A4, so I can fit it all.
Oh my God, yeah, I bet that's, I was going to say that takes up quite a lot of space, doesn't it? How many characters in your card?
Yeah, a lot. So it's more than one line, let's put it that way.
But listen, thank you. Just give me a little bit of your background. How did you actually come to work at Geotab? Because you were previously, we were just talking off the recording, you were previously at Vodafone, weren't you? So yeah. How did you move over to Geotab?
Yeah, good question. So I guess my background's always been in kind of the buzzword space, I like to say. So I started my career in the Internet of Things at Vodafone, so working on a few different things from product management to program implementation and sales, but essentially working with some of the larger businesses in the world to do complicated things within the Internet of Things. I decided to move over to Geotab because in that Internet of Things there's a lot going on, and I wanted to work for a business that was kind of really trying to be the experts at one thing. And from a Geotab point of view, that's connecting vehicles and getting data from vehicles. And as I'm sure we'll see from this conversation, that in itself, is a whole career's worth of topics. So I wanted to get to the point where kind of I was specialising, and so Geotab worked very closely with Vodafone, as well as some other big partners like Shell and Telefonica. So I still get to work with all my old colleagues at Vodafone, but now I get to be kind of one of the experts working on the vehicle data side of the Internet of Things, while I let them remain the broad overarching umbrella to support their customers, essentially.
So Geotab are North American, aren't they? Can you just tell people who don't know what Geotab do? Just explain what they do. You work in telematics, don't you?
Yes.
So what is it that you're actually providing?
Yeah, good question. So I suppose to give you a bit of the elevator pitch, so Geotab is the largest telematics company in the world. So we have about 2.3 million vehicles connected today, and that's from about 46,000 individual customer fleets. And that can be, all the way from AJ Paints, who's, a relatively small to medium-sized business, looking after a few vans, right through to some of the largest fleets in the world. So Geotab's sweet spot really is any fleet manager that has an interest beyond tracking, we like to say. So Geotab's focus is getting a lot of data from vehicles and then allowing you to create insight from that data. Okay. More recently, Geotab's been focused on taking that scale that we've got and applying some, machine learning and AI to it to give insights. So, that fleet manager at AJ Paint is probably, because maybe he's got 10 vehicles, he's a small business owner, doesn't have the time that the fleet manager at a very large business where it's their full-time job might have to understand how, a litre of fuel converts into, CO2 emitted, or how this idling might affect the fuel that they're burning and therefore the emissions or the costs. So we're trying to build tools that take what we know across all of that data and provide valuable insights to a fleet manager that maybe doesn't have time to glean them themselves, essentially. And then my role looks specifically at taking that global scale and bringing it into Europe, and specifically into the UK is the majority of my work. So I joined Geotab 3 years ago. That was pretty early on in Geotab's journey in the UK. So we're pretty much unknown, weren't really doing much work outside of some key big global customers that we have. And today, 3 years on, we're one of the larger telematics companies in the UK in our own right, and one of the larger telematics companies in Europe. And we've got a pretty good penetration now of those big strategic fleets, but also lots of smaller fleets that can get the benefit of that scale.
So
what have you seen over the last? So you've been working for Geotab 3 years, and obviously there's now a move towards electric vehicles, isn't there? I know you mentioned about fuel and data that way, but what have you seen over the last 3 years with regards to kind of the move and the data that you're collecting around sort of like electric EV fleets?
Yeah.
I suppose because my thinking is, and maybe I'm wrong here, that kind of the tech availability or the tech in an EV seems to be at a much higher level than in an ICE vehicle, in a combustion engine vehicle.
Yeah.
So how has it been for you guys to kind of move over towards that kind of that EV space?
Yeah, it's a really good question actually, and it comes back to kind of the way I described the reason for my desire to work for Geotab. So Geotab's very, very good at getting data from ICE vehicles. We've been doing that for 20 years. So an internal combustion engine, we add a lot of value to a fleet or a leasing company or a rental company because we're experts at getting odometer and fault codes and AdBlue level and fuel levels and all those good things, which actually is nice for me because in the UK and European market, that isn't necessarily a given. There's not many telematics companies can do what we see as our hygiene factors. So we're taking real engine data and making that available in various ways. Now, when you apply that to electric vehicles, there's a few key things. So first of all, as you say, an electric vehicle is both more complicated and more simple than a combustion engine. So much less moving parts, but at the same time, you've got a battery, that's charging, and you've got energy lost in the charging cycle and all these good things. So in the data, there's different things to look at. And as you can imagine, changes in state of charge and kilowatt hours in and out of a battery, we need to measure those in quite different ways to you'd need to measure a fuel level, as an example. But also what's interesting there is the fact that fleet managers and the industry generally, and OEMs and leasing companies, don't really know what the key data points are. If you speak to a fleet manager with 30 years of experience, they'll tell you that fuel level's important, idling's important, driver behaviour in terms of braking and accelerating is important for different reasons. But what's important if you've got 100 electric vans?
Yeah.
People aren't actually sure. So we're starting to see emerging issues such as drivers who have been provided at great expense to the business a charger at home, not using the charger at home because actually it takes 40 minutes to charge the vehicle. So me and all my mates can meet up at lunchtime, charge our vehicles and have lunch together, which is fine, except for the fact that that's at a premium in terms of the cost of the energy. And the business has spent a good amount of money putting a charger at their house. So there's these new issues that are emerging where different data points are very important. So for that example, state of charge is very important. So Geotab puts a lot of effort into getting state of charge from vehicles, but equally puts a lot of effort into being agile to change the data points we're getting or develop and iterate over time. And it's where we're particularly differentiated in the electric vehicle space. So we get the data points that in our experience are key today from electric vehicles, which is state of charge, energy in and out of the battery, and a few others, from over 300 different makes and models of vehicles today. And that's relatively impressive once you start to get into the world of looking at, can my connectivity provider get me the data I need from the next electric vehicle I buy? Generally the answer is no. Geotab's aim is to have the answer be yes, and it is for most of our customers. The majority of our our work today, I would say, is focused in that space, getting data from vehicles.
So what does a telematics system look like? Because I've not seen one. For example, my business is far too small to kind of, I'm not going to have a fleet. Well, there might be. My two colleagues are kind of trying to decide what EVs they'd like. But basically, what does it look like? Is it kind of like, I suppose I'm thinking it might look like, kind of the old, oh my goodness, my mind's just gone totally blank. Just like a little box that you'd put in that's connected through to the battery. Is that how it works?
Broadly, yes, and it's interesting the terminology you use there. The kind of the old kind of black box, and that
Yeah, I know. That's the only thing I could think of then. I couldn't get the words.
yeah, and that's specifically where I think Geotab is quite different. So in my career, I've worked with a number of different telematics programs, and especially in Europe, those telematics programs that have existed before Geotab's entrance into the market tend to be the lowest possible cost hardware that you can get to sell at scale in a commoditized market to get the least number of data points you could get to communicate over the air to appease the customer, essentially. So generally that will look like a very inexpensive piece of hardware, a black box, which is capturing GPS and some accelerometer data.
Okay.
And that can be very inexpensive and is really the minimum viable product for a connected vehicle. So it's interesting to your point there around, maybe you're a new business, you're sustainability focused, so now you're providing to 3 people an electric vehicle. Well, actually, more so than ever, connectivity might be interesting for you there, because what I was describing before, you don't want to have a driver behavior program. You're not going to be looking to leverage your telematics data to get a better insurance quote, because frankly the insurers aren't that interested in looking at the data from 3 vehicles. There's not that many levers for you to pull in the traditional sense, but actually now that you have some drivers with electric vehicles, you can provide to them as an employer some significant gains, both in their use of an electric vehicle, but also your ability to have them be efficient. So I'll jump right to the modern day, so the kind of, let's say, cutting edge of telematics. Geotab is focused on taking that data that I mentioned, so the battery state of charge and the rate that it's charging, and providing tools to help drivers and fleet managers manage their fleet. So if I look at Muller, Milk and More, probably the oldest existing electric vehicle fleet in the UK, the old electric milk float, they run good chunks of their business using dashboards from Geotab, which are showing them that, over there you've got vehicle A and vehicle B. Vehicle A is on 80% charge and charging at this rate, and vehicle B, for whatever reason, is on low charge and charging very slowly. And they can see on the dashboard, I need to go and look at vehicle B because for whatever reason, it's not charging at the rate we need it to. So at 3 a.m. tomorrow, Liz can do her milk round. And, it's providing those types of tools. Obviously, you can see how that works at scale for a large delivery company or a milk business. But actually, equally, if you've got an employee in your business that needs to drive to meet me in High Wycombe tomorrow, and you've provided them an electric vehicle and a charger, that's great. You've spent a lot of money on getting them what they need to be sustainable. If that charger's not behaving correctly and it's not charged overnight, you've essentially got a breakdown event, which means they can't get to where they need to go tomorrow. So providing those tools to automatically send you an email to say, hey, Aaron should be leaving the house at 8 a.m, but the vehicle, it's 10 p.m. now and the vehicle's not going to be charged enough to do the trip that's planned, actually becomes more relevant to a small fleet than it would have been before in terms of connected vehicle thing. So off on a bit of a tangent, but I guess the point being, when you ask what does Geotab do for a fleet manager, our aim is to get that data and then present it in a way that's insightful to your context. So for Liz, that might be a small business that just wants to make sure that Aaron can do his job tomorrow. And the larger the business gets, that might be providing something that can go up on a big, huge screen in a depot, or it could be making sure that all the data is present in Power BI or into SAP, or it's getting around the business to where it needs to be. Because we're increasingly seeing the fleet manager as a provider of data to other areas of the business. And as sustainability becomes more and more present and different teams are interested in the different scopes of emissions, that gets really important, right? Because you need to know how many kilowatt hours of power went into a battery to report your scope 2 emissions. And you need to know how much fuel was burnt for your scope 1 emissions, so there's lots of different customers now for the fleet manager is the way I tend to put it.
So we're looking at efficient ways of driving as well, and providing the fleet managers that information as well as the drivers themselves. I'm assuming that would relate to kind of harsh acceleration and harsh braking, because obviously if you've got a vehicle that's got regenerative braking, then that's going to actually have an issue
Yeah,
if you're doing that all the time.
yeah, and it's more important than ever in an electric vehicle because, like I say, that traditional harsh accelerating and braking was a little bit to do with getting better MPG out of the vehicle. That's true. And in HGVs, that was very true. So traditionally, HGVs have been in Europe on the forefront of vehicle data because you'll be looking at anticipation between pedals and different, because as you can imagine, changing the MPG on a HGV saves the business a lot of money. And in vans, that's also true. The primary driver in vans is avoiding speeding events and bringing down the risk of collision. You take that because ultimately, if you burn a lot of fuel, you could just go and fuel up. If you burn a lot of diesel, it still only takes you 10 minutes to fill up with diesel. When we're looking at an electric vehicle, changing the efficiency of an electric vehicle can be the difference between an electric bus being able to carry out its route, an electric van being able to make all its deliveries for the day, versus having to stop for 40 minutes. What we're seeing is that stop that I keep referring to is suddenly a breakdown event. So that is the same as your engine blowing up in a diesel van because you can't drive it anymore, and now it's off the road, and you've got an issue and you need to charge it. So yeah, looking at the driver behavior is much more important, like you say, with regenerative braking. And we've seen up to a 30% increase in the effective range of an electric vehicle based on changes in driver behavior. And this has led us into some really interesting programs. So I mentioned at the start not knowing what the issues are we're going to solve with the data. We work really closely with a number of vehicle manufacturers and importers, including the Harris Group, to help their dealers essentially sell more vans. Because you'll take Aaron turns up and takes an electric van for the weekend as a demo and drives it like a go-kart because it's fun and it accelerates quickly, and then comes back on Monday and says, yeah, it's no good for my job though because I couldn't get enough range. And being able to accurately look at the data from that trip and say, well, here's what good looks like and here's what you did, try again for a couple of days, and all of a sudden you have a much greater uptake of electric vehicles at a driver level. And that's really important for a fleet manager that's trying to transition a fleet effectively. If you get your 5 best drivers and give them a demo electric vehicle and they get excited and drive it for 2 days like a go-kart and come back and say, well, it didn't have the range I needed, suddenly your whole fleet can't transition because the drivers don't want to, versus actually having some data and doing some coaching with them. Now they really like it because, I think it's well known, and, Paul Kirby would hopefully appreciate me saying drivers generally like driving an electric van more than a diesel van once they understand and once they're in it and they get all the benefits. But when they first get it, they drive it a bit like a go-kart because it's fun. For anybody who's got into an electric vehicle. So yeah,
oh my God, yeah. I've done a few test drives, and I'm definitely up for buying one. I've kind of sort of read and spoke to a number of people who've kind of said once you get into an EV and you understand it and you understand what you can get from it, it is all about that. To me, it's about having continuity of driving. My husband always accuses me of kind of harsh acceleration. I drive a lot more than he does because he's a scientist. He's a climate change scientist. He doesn't want to get in a car particularly, So yeah, it's probably something that I'd need to concentrate on with regards to continuity. And I don't know whether you know John Burdekin. I was talking to him a couple of months back now, and he kind of works with fleets, and we were talking about that. He's the person I learnt about regenerative braking from, and kind of the understanding about regen, and as you're saying about that continuity, and I've written down as we've been talking. It is about behaviour change. It's kind of about it's in a way it's similar to what I do in my business improvement work.
Yeah.
It is about behaviour change. I will have to change my behaviour when I get an EV, which is quite close now I'm talking to people about how I'm gonna move through this. But how do you? I mean, I don't know, Aaron. You've got to tell me this. How do you find convincing fleet managers? Like you said, you'll get somebody who kind of takes up an EV, drives it like a go-kart, or a van, whatever, drives it like a go-kart. But have you found it difficult to kind of convince people who are fleet managers, or you've been involved in that kind of convincing to get them to move to electric vehicles and also use your products as well to kind of utilize utilize the benefits? Have you had that at all? Have you come across it?
Yeah, so this is where I think creating some of these, let's call them off-the-shelf tools, to make it the first step very easy. Because ultimately, we don't know what all the challenges are. So every fleet manager will have different challenges within their business. But what we're trying to do is give you that first tool. So as an example, we have an electric vehicle suitability assessment, which essentially means any of our customers today, as part of their product that they already procure from us, can click a button and have an output that says, okay, so if you're in the UK, this is the real driving data from all of the vehicles you've got. So primarily looking at temperature and terrain and distance driven. Well, from a very pessimistic point of view, so looking at the very worst case, these vehicles could switch to electric. So, they wouldn't need to charge during the day based on the temperatures they're driving in the distances they're driving. They can transition. And because we make that hopefully very easy for the fleet manager, gets over that first hurdle of, oh my God, I don't know where to start. One of the common ones seems to be, I'm going to retire in a couple of years. That's the next person's problem. So just by having that initial thing, so maybe you can just pick up our Liz and Aaron, this report from Geotab just says very clearly that they could both easily change to an electric vehicle. So I'll just do that to start off with. That's the first step. And then the tool allows us to sit with them, or their partner to sit with them and go into a bit more detail. Or, what if this group of drivers, they have a lunch break so they can charge in the lunch break? Or what if this group of, what if we changed the driving routes of the fleets a little bit? What if we had a bit more charging infrastructure? And we can go on a journey with them. So the point is creating tools that make the first step easy, so now you're on the journey. And we can work with you. And that's why, we work closely with the EV Cafe to try and make sure that we've got the right ecosystem in place to then, as the problems get more complex, so actually that vehicle needs to have a cherry picker on it, and it needs to be, able to have the PTO on for X amount of hours per day. Then we're bringing in the ecosystem, or that Internet of Things, to solve the problem in a bit more detail. But our aim is to be that sort of gateway for fleet managers to get over that kind of, used to be range anxiety, right? Just general electric vehicle anxiety, and into, a productive thought process along the journey. And we can do all the way from that. So, Liz looking at the data from her existing vehicles on 2 or 3, through to, we've done scaled things in North America on tens of thousands of vehicles. We ran a study recently on almost 100,000 vehicles to see what we thought the suitability would be and a few levers that we would need to pull. And it was something like 60 to 70% of the vehicles that we studied could transition to electric with very few, levers pulled, as it were, within.
Yeah. That's brilliant. It's just so clever. I always say this. Every time I talk to somebody, I love the technology, and I get such a buzz from hearing people talk about the technology, and I know in the next kind of 7 years things are going to be changing even more, because once and the numbers of people moving to EV. God, I really hope that the numbers increase, because I'm friends with people who and I've got colleagues as well who would rather, I'm sorry people, I'm going to say the D word, would rather drive a diesel. You know who you are if you're listening. But I would love that person or those people to actually recognise the benefit of doing this. I mean, I'm going to slightly go off on a tangent. I've kind of the whole idea of polluting and air pollution for a start off with a diesel or kind of a petrol vehicle like we've got. If you read up on that and the number of people who are either very ill or are dying from air pollution, to me, moving to an EV just makes sense. If it isn't for anything other than making sure we're not killing other people,
Yeah, it's really interesting point. So, and this is so Geotab around 2013, 2014 decided to make this huge investment in the EV transition. So we acquired a consultancy business that really were on the forefront, back in 2013, 2014. Not many people knew much about electric vehicles. So we really got into that space heavily and have continued to invest there. And it's all essentially for, without sounding too much of the martyr about it, but for the greater good in terms of that global decarbonisation piece. And what was really interesting for me joining Geotab is I joined, great, awesome business. We can get all this data from electric vehicles. We've got all these tools to help people transition. Felt like we're miles ahead of the market in terms of having the right tools and being able to help people. But almost immediately, we had the global semiconductor crisis, which we still haven't recovered from, and people couldn't get electric vehicles.
Yeah.
So we, at the time, were working along this global strategy, which had 3 pillars, which was go electric, operate electric, and scale electric. So, in broad terms, which vehicles can I make electric? How can I operate them? And now I'm operating some, how can I scale out and have my whole fleet? But what we quickly realised is that even fleet managers that had committed, there's lots of fleet managers in the UK, looking specifically at the UK, that have said, I'm not going to buy any more ICE vehicles. All of my vehicles from now on are electric. The CEO said we're committed to it. It doesn't matter what it costs. That's what we're doing. But the next vehicle I can get is in 3 years' time because there's plenty of those examples, and I spend a lot of time sat at conferences with fleet managers and with leasing companies and with OEMs going through. Yeah, we're not actually sure when we'll get the next one of those. Yeah, we can't guarantee the price for it. We can't really guarantee the spec because the whole world's in uncertainty. So we added kind of a pillar 0. So we had 1, 2, and 3. Pillar 0 is decarbonising the existing fleet, and we put a bit more attention, and we'd already had it for numerous reasons, but now looking specifically at carbon emission and decarbonisation around tools to help Liz, who's got a petrol. How can we help Liz have less of an impact on the environment? Or even just as simple as, I was mentioning before, the fleet manager as a data product owner almost. So how can we help the fleet manager report on this and show an improvement? So I've seen a huge increase in the last 3 years on the amount of work, I should say, which is awarded based more on sustainability goals than financial goals. So we're doing a lot of work with Siemens at the minute, where their procurement team are very focused on only procuring things that have a positive impact on the world. So what does that mean in reality? Well, now if I want to do cleaning work for Siemens at scale, I need to be able to show Siemens that I'm going to do that cleaning work in a more sustainable way every year. And vehicles, if I'm a cleaning business, obviously I've got chemicals I'm using for cleaning. Actually, if I'm doing it at scale, vast majority of my emissions are driving to and from the facilities that I'm cleaning. So if we can help those fleets who can't just change to an electric vehicle today, which is all of them essentially, run what they've got in a more sustainable way and report on it, then we're in a really positive position. So, we've also, I'm mentioning these tools of, well, how does my fleet look compared to another fleet somewhere else in the world, or the average of similar fleets? We're really helping fleets show that plan. So here's our emissions today, here's our emissions for the last 12 months, and here's some tools that Geotab have given us to help us start the journey of improving that. And that first step likely isn't swap half of the vehicles for electric. It's probably cut down on the idling, improve the miles per gallon, and those types of things, and right through to some of the clever things that you can do with fuel injection and different things to reduce the emissions.
That's brilliant. I hadn't actually thought about it in that way, and you're right. There are so many people who want to move to electric, but like you say, it's too difficult because of the kind of the market conditions at the moment, or more because you can't you know, like you say, you don't know when you're going to get them. So actually providing them with that information, that's so invaluable, isn't it? That's amazing.
We try.
Because you were saying, weren't you, before we started recording as well, about the fact that Geotab is quite a different organisation to the other telematics companies that are out there, you know, because of how you've worked. You know, you're kind of a fresh player in the market, really. Even though you've been around for a long time, you're kind of doing it in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, the European market for telematics is very mature. You know, everybody will have experience in the last 30 years of, as you say, working with one of those boxes that's in a vehicle and it's going to report whether I'm speeding. And then increasingly, you know, in recent years, now every under 25-year-old driver's got one of those boxes in their vehicles, because by opting into having one of those boxes, the insurer sees a significant reduction in risk for you having it versus not. And what that's meant is a ton of telematics businesses that are built up to generate subscription revenue, and then have gone through a lot of M&A activity to move, you know, subscription revenue from one business to another and do it more efficiently.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like that means with any industry that's gone through that process, there's a lot of businesses that have been around for a number of years that have been through several efficiency exercises, let's say, which ultimately results in legacy technology and not the greatest amount of investment. What's nice about Geotab and working as part of the leadership team here at Geotab is we're still privately owned by the founder, and we still reinvest significant amount of our profits every year into the development of the product and our growth. So, you know, if you look at our journey just here in the UK, 3 years ago when I joined, I was, I think, employee number 7 in the UK, and you'll notice Geotab has always referred to their employee number. So I think 7th in the UK and 700th globally. Now in the UK, we're coming up to 40 employees, and each one of those is, you know, adding a lot of value to the business. And globally, we're over 2,000 employees now. And just looking at the UK, we have a great office in central London now, which is kind of the business centre where we host a lot of our clients and do a lot of our kind of front-end customer-facing and software work. And we also have a state-of-the-art research and development facility in High Wycombe, where we're pulling apart vehicles every day and making sure that for the UK and European market, we can get all the data we need. That's just investment by us. So we're always growing our business. Our team in Europe is quite large. We recently acquired a business called Intendia so that we can be on the forefront of remote tachograph download technology. We're constantly trying to expand our product. And to the point of, you know, our speciality, we try to find partners to do the selling for us, in the sense that hopefully if you're a fleet manager, part of your ecosystem can already provide you Geotab, because we're partnered with most of the telcos. You know, we have Shell as a partner, we have the leasing companies in Europe as partners, as well as many smaller businesses that are actively trying to work with fleets and add value there, so that most of our staff out of those 2,000 can be really focused on developing the product. So, you know, we have thousands of engineers. If I look at the UK team, the majority of the team in the UK are either solutions engineers or automotive engineers, so building the product, not selling the product. You know, our focus is on providing value on that side.
And is that what the R&D team do in High Wycombe then? Because that's not far away from me. That's literally 40 minutes away from me. I could go and have a look.
We'd love to host your podcast in High Wycombe for sure. And what it means is you can see loads of cool stuff happening in the background. So yeah, we've got a great team there that are really hands-on with solving fleet managers' problems. So whether that's pulling apart an e-transit to make sure we get the right data, right through to making sure that our temperature sensors are working correctly to guarantee a cold chain, to making sure that we've got an active link for tacho download. There's 101 examples that our team would get very excited about me giving of cool technology things that they're doing. That's really at the heart of what Geotab do. The best example is for the British Antarctic Survey. All of their skidoos, the actual boat, everything that they use, or ship I should say, I'll get in trouble for saying that, are all connected using Geotab technology because we wanted to help that project. So now instead of when they find something in the Antarctic having to spend days getting back to base to report the data, we help them develop a solution based on Geotab technology that they can get a satellite link and send that data back home. You know, there's not many telematics companies in the world, I would argue, that can work with a customer like British Antarctic Survey and others to really solve their kind of niche problems.
That's brilliant. And I'm such a geek. I love hearing about all this stuff. I really, really do. I am just a massive geek.
Yeah, you should come to the office. The other unique thing about Geotab is most of our tools that we've built internally are named after Star Wars stuff. So our main reverse engineering vehicles is called R2-D2, and it kind of goes from there. So if you come to the office, you can nerd out for sure.
Oh, I love that as well. And we're also, me and my husband and my son, we're all kind of big Star Wars fans as well. So you've sold me on that.
We'll get you a hot desk in the office if you want, and you can come and nerd out with us.
Oh, stop it now. You don't want me just rocking them up. Hello, Aaron said.
Yeah, don't worry, they'll shoot me, not you, it's fine.
What, with a laser?
Yeah, they'll be super polite for you, and then I'll be getting all the heat for just inviting people to look at all the cool stuff.
So you were talking, right at the beginning, machine learning and AI. How is AI, because this is another thing, like I say, I am such a geek for stuff like this. How is AI actually leading what you're doing, and machine learning? Because obviously I'm assuming that it's got to be a massive part of what you're doing.
Yes, it is. So, another big part of those 2,000 employees is we have over 100 data scientists that are really focused on that bit that I said. So from those 2.3 million vehicles that we have connected, we're generating upwards now of 50 billion data points a day, which is tough. We're a significant data generating business. And what that means is there's a lot of value there that can be provided, but how do you extract that value? We are creating products that are interesting, so in the smart city space to help local government plan their charging infrastructure, monitor the quality of their roads and all those good things. In Europe and specifically the UK, there's a lot of talk around tolling and e-tolling and, what value can be added there. And we think we're well placed there. But most importantly for us, most of the work of that team is taking that huge amount of global data that we have and making it really relevant to a fleet manager. So the easiest way to explain that is around one of our key bits of innovation. So we create benchmarks between fleets, and that's based on some vocations. So one of the early bits of machine learning that we implemented is, so let's look at the Geotab UK fleet. So we've got some engineers, we've got some automotive guys, we've got some salespeople. If we look at that fleet, historically, you might just say, well, Geotab's a technology company, so let's compare Geotab to other technology companies. And then you might look at a delivery business and compare it to another delivery business. But as I'm sure you'll appreciate, it's much more nuanced than that, right? So there's no point comparing AJ Paints in the UK to a paint business in Texas, because the driving that they're doing is just vastly different. Whereas actually AJ Paints might be more similar to, some small fleet in North America, but maybe AJ Paints is in Scotland, so it's very hilly and cold, and there's 10 vehicles doing 100 to 200 miles a day. Well, let's compare that fleet to another fleet that's doing something similar. And all of a sudden you go from only being able to compare delivery fleets in the UK to other delivery fleets in the UK to being able to compare fleets globally that have similar behaviours and similar activity. And that's where we suddenly unlock a lot of value. So now AJ Paints as a fleet manager, we can provide insight, which is, well, what does the idling look like for the best fleets that are similar to you and the worst fleets that are similar to you, and create a benchmark. So then we're starting to present to fleet managers, just staying on the idling point, right, so the top, out of all the fleets that are similar to you in the world, the best fleets have this much idling as an average. The kind of 80th percentile, which is kind of good, have this much, and here's you. So you're below or above. And then coming back to my earlier point around, how are fleet managers able to support their sales team winning that business, to say, well, what's your sustainability? What are your emissions today, and what are you doing to improve it? Well, actually, one, being able to report it, and two, to be able to show where you compare to other similar fleets factually from a trusted data point, which is Geotab, and then what Geotab tools are you using to improve that? That's where we're really starting to use the machine learning point. And that's a high level example, and then we have plenty of examples going right down granular into details. So, we can look at the cranking voltage down to a millisecond between vehicles and say, well, this behavior led to the alternator failing or the battery failing. And then, on a micro level, be able to say, okay, Liz, the battery in your Transit is going to fail soon because we've seen this behavior on 10,000 Transits that's battery failed next. So you see kind of the micro and macro versions of how we're using machine learning. And I could go all day with examples, but
That's
I'll
just
leave.
mind blowing. That's amazing. Honestly, you've totally opened this up to me because, I kind of I thought I knew, but I didn't know enough about what you did. So that is absolutely just, totally mind blowing. I'm just thinking that I could probably talk to you all day about this because of the fact that I could totally. I'm just geeking out on this. But what I think I might have to get you back on again another time. If people are interested, if there are fleet managers or people in general who are interested in talking to you about bringing their fleets on board with Geotab, how do they find you? How do they get hold of you?
Good question. So we have a website, as you'd imagine, so geotab.com. And if you go through there, you'll find request a demo and all that good stuff. Equally, you reach out to me on LinkedIn. I can put you in touch with our team and make sure that you're kind of directed in the right way. And then generally, looking specifically at the UK and Europe, we're present at most industry events. So you'll always find someone from Geotab or a Geotab stand somewhere around. So hopefully you can find us relatively easily. Or I'm not doing my job well enough. Let's put it that way.
And you're going to be at Fully Charged in April, aren't you?
Yep.
As
So
you
we're
were
at
saying,
Fully
you need to
Charged.
be
We're at
there.
the ITT hub. We're everywhere.
Are you going to Fully Charged North and South then, or South?
I
and
believe
North?
so. Yeah, I'm speaking at Fully Charged South, and I'm just waiting for the plan for Fully Charged North. So yeah, hopefully we're there if you need us. So
and for those of you that don't know about Fully Charged, it's Fully Charged Live that is run. It's kind of Robert Llewellyn's, who is one of my favourite people, and I've not actually spoken to him yet on this. I would love to. It's kind of, if anybody remembers Red Dwarf and Crichton, he played Crichton. Bless his heart. And he's been running this YouTube channel for, is it about 12 years, I think now, isn't it? And he has this live event that happens, or it's kind of grown to something massive, hasn't it? So there's Fully Charged live down in the South one is in Farnborough in April. There's another one, I think it's in May, up in Harrogate. It might be an excuse for me to go and find my northern friends when I go up there. And then they're all over the place. I think, is he in Australia at the moment or something? I'm flipping, all over the place. So yeah, check it out because it's definitely worth, and obviously seeing you. So hopefully I'll actually be able to bump into you down there.
Yep, we'll be there, and we're actually supporting Fully Charged in a number of their global locations as well. So yeah, you can find Geotab with Fully Charged pretty much everywhere as well.
Fantastic. And also, because you're a sponsor of the EV Cafe, you are mentioned a lot on there anyway, aren't you, by all the team?
Yeah, they have to because we sponsor them, but yeah.
Even if they didn't.
Cafe, yeah, and as I mentioned them before, they're quite well aligned with our objectives. So I didn't mention it much today, but big part of our goal is to make sure we have an ecosystem around our product of insurers and charge point operators and that's very similar to the way the EV Cafe operates. So we feel well aligned with them.
Yeah, they're a good team. They're a good bunch. But listen, thank you ever so much. You are also on LinkedIn, aren't you? But I don't know how kind of regular you're sort of posting on there. But I have seen you've got an account on there if people want to find you, I suppose.
Yes, yep, I'm there. It's been really great to speak with you, Liz. Thanks for inviting me on.
It's been, like I said, geeking out with you. Fantastic, loved it. So yeah, thank you very much, Aaron. And so I'm gonna say goodbye to everybody else, but thank you to you, and see you later, everybody. Bye.
You've been watching Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon, and you'll receive all of our weekly videos. Thanks for watching. See you soon.